but for a number of years, I kept myself paying attention to the heat. I don't know if it really works or not, but that's my approach to it. Not gonna go out to eat it, but at the same time, I'm gonna do it. Yeah, with Allah's name, the mercy. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Masjid New Africa Center for Human Development's Talib and Sunday public address. Again, we would like to welcome back our dear Imam Haywood Talib. Again, as I said last time, affectionately referred to as Sheikh Talib, with, inshallah, the third of part 3 of 3 in his presentation of a salute to subhanallah, the man behind the men, a salute to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Again, this is sponsored in part by the AA Committee for Cultural Education. So we had to add another part 3 onto this today because there were just so many questions and still so much knowledge and understanding and information that our beloved Imam needed to present to us. So without further ado, Brother Imam Sheikh Haywood Talib. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Thank you very much, sister. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, I bear witness them that deserve to be served, worship, or obeyed except Allah alone. I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant and his messenger, the seal of the prophets, of mercy to all mankind, and the leader of the modern world. And I always like to give thanks to Allah for blessing us to be alive in this day and time, in this part of the world, and to have the opportunity to live this lifestyle that Allah said of all of the lifestyle that He allowed to exist, the one that He prefers for His believing creatures is that of al-Islam, that is submission to His will. So we are going to do the third session of 2 sessions today.
That's right.
And even with that, we had to cut it off some. It's so much information and it's so deep and wonderful that again, I'm glad that Allah allowed us to have this conversation and to be able to strengthen our faith, because that's what it's all about, to give strength to our strength, to really know where we come from. And for me, my thing is to try to establish within us, especially African Americans, that America is our country. We come out of this soil. People talk about Africa, yeah. Africa is our motherland, yeah. But our native land is America. We are descendants of the slaves here in the slave system here in America. So being born in this soil, this is what makes us, or makes this land, my native land. That's my position on it. And we're trying to push it to other folks. There's a meeting that I'm part of on Thursday mornings from 11:30 to 1 o'clock, and it's at a Shape Community Center, and it's the Elders Institute of Wisdom meeting. It's nothing but old folks, retirees, educators, all kinds of. It's a nice session, and it's low key. And we always open up with "Lift Every Voice and Sing." That's our song that we open up with. And at the end of it, it said, "True to our God, true to our native land." And I started injecting America in that. So now every time we come to that part, some of us, we're getting it now. We say, "America." But now we have one sister, she's Africa. I said, "America," she said, "Africa." So she wants us to focus on Africa. I said, "Yeah, well, that's good, but for real, this is our native land, right? You know." So that's what and this is where we have to really begin to accept responsibility and accept it as ours. You know, we still say it belongs to the man, but we're just in it. So there's so many fronts that we have to deal with to help. I guess you might say Honorable Elijah Muhammad, what his mission was to raise the dead, you know. So we're still trying to work on raising the dead. So I want to open, we're going to talk about the section of do for self. But I have this statement that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad made, and I like that. He said, "My mission is to give life to the dead. What I teach brings them out of the death into life. My mission as a messenger is to bring the truth to the world before the world is destroyed. I do not say that I will live so long as that. But when God comes, if it pleases him, I may be with him. However, if I'm not with him, this is the final. The truth that I bring will give you the knowledge of yourself and the knowledge of God." And this comes from the book, The Message to the Black Man. And so my statement is, there's no other person in American history that I know of can be credited for producing four of the most dynamic men than the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That is Wallace, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Louis Farrakhan. And that's something to think about, because the name that rings mostly in our ears here in America is Dr. Martin Luther King. Everybody talked about Dr. King, which was great and all of that, but him and none of the others can be credited with giving birth to these great men that's internationally known. And that's something to think about too, because for the most of us, we don't know a whole lot about the Nation of Islam, what was going on in the inside. We know what was put out there and some of the speeches and all of that, but a lot of that stuff that was taught on the inside wasn't brought on the outside. And some of it, if you would bring it on the outside, people might laugh you off the corner. But at the same time, we understand we've had brothers and sisters who were so strong in that, and they were so convinced that when they did come outside and challenge people with what they were taught inside, the people had to kind of take their head off to them or back up or something, or just let them go, you know. So we want to start off with the do for self subject. And it says, in my opinion, this is me, in my opinion, one of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that was more beneficial than calling the white man the devil was the do for self teaching. The do for self teaching also included the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's encouraging his followers and sympathizers to come out from under their slave master's name. The concept of name, as used by Mr. Muhammad, meant more than just the letters and the sound that spells or articulates an individual's name. It was more than a mere word or a title that one may respond to when they heard their personal name called. For Muhammad, your name included the social, ethnic, religious, and historical connections associated with it. He said, all nations of the earth are recognized by the name of which they are called. By stating one's name, one is able to associate an entire order of a particular civilization simply by name alone. When it comes to African Americans wearing European names, particularly surnames of their family's former slave masters, Mr. Muhammad understood this to be a pulsating vestige of slavery. He wanted more for his followers than a leftover reminder of servitude, something better than a name derived from slavery. Repeatedly, he reminded his followers to do for self. Upon becoming a registered member of the Nation of Islam, the new Muslims surrendered their so-called slave name in exchange for the surname X, a placeholder for the unknown, pre-slavery name. As the X in algebra symbolizes an unknown number of value, the X as a surname represented the bearer's unknown Islamic or African family name. So out of respect for their parents, members of the Nation of Islam kept their given names, which mean our first name, as with Yusuf instead of Joseph, and Yahya instead of John. Now, one interesting thing about the idea of the surnames, during slavery, the slave's surname was that of the slave master. But them having that surname didn't identify them as part of the family. It identified them as being owned by the family, being property of the family. So that meant that I might be Snodgrass today, but in the next 2 weeks, Master Snodgrass might sell me to Master Jones. And if he sells me to Master Jones, then I'm no longer Snodgrass anymore. Now I'm Jones. And then Jones will sell me to Johnson, and then I'm Johnson. So that's an interesting situation there that we see that was going on. For those of us that may not understand that, well, just like I have a car. If I have a car, I have the title. My name is on the title. If I sell it to you and you buy it, then you take my name off the title and put your name on the title. So that was the same thing that was going on with the slaves, because they were looked at as property, and not as human beings. And then some of them looked at them as human beings, but exactly not on a high level as the others. They're a little bit lower. So, treating them half bad wasn't so bad, but you could treat them a little good, things like that. So it was a kind of mysterious relationship with the slave master and the slave that was going on that a lot of us didn't understand and don't understand, because we don't talk about it much. But it's interesting to be talked about. So it says, the Nation of Islam's practice for retaining first names is a sign that it was not Europeanized names that most disturbed Elijah Muhammad, but it was keeping of the surname that most likely came from the former slave master. Earning an X was honorable and a sign of renewal. The teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, notwithstanding their racial underpinnings, provided his followers with ideals and programs for uplifting African Americans without seeking the approval or acceptance from anyone except God. There are many other leaders in contemporary historical African American communities who sought God as their main source of health and security, but few had a functioning community life that was as independent and well equipped as Elijah Muhammad's do for self, Nation of Islam. And it keeps going through my mind that this man had only a third grade education, you know, and he started in the 1930s and built this community and all of that from 1933 on up to 75. And all of this influence that he had here in America, not only with the African American, but government leaders and all of these kinds of folks. And I'm still saying this man came with a third grade education, and that wasn't worth nothing back there where he was, you know. But it's one of those things for those of us who say we believe in God. I think that would be a little bit for me to kind of take my hat off to God in that sense. Looking at him being able to do what he do, because again, too, during the time of the Nation of Islam, there were a lot of communities popped up and got knocked down, got wiped out. And he's talking all that crazy stuff, and men and women out there in the street talking this stuff and all that. But for some reason, they still survive. But all these others falling around. So that's the thing that really gets me. You know, I find that very, very interesting that he was able to stand and evolve. Because those of us who say we are part of some say it's part of the second resurrection or evolution and Islam proper and all of that, still have to be connected with him and them. Yeah, so it's really interesting. And African Americans really need to know that. I think it would help heal some of these wounds that we're always talking about that we got during slavery. So it says, Wallace D. Muhammad, Mr. Muhammad's son, also applied the do-for-self philosophy, wherein one proceeds forward towards an objective regardless if it satisfies the status quo. It was through Wallace that Elijah Muhammad's influence indirectly reached the minds and souls of the world's religious leadership. Imam W.D. Muhammad, the successor of the Elijah Muhammad, quietly yet effectively introduced many Quranic-based solutions to many problems in America and around the world. Contributions that often reflect a conscious connection to the teachings and discipline he learned from his father. Without seeking permission or approval for any race or established religion, Wallace set out to remove the crippling effects that resulted from using racial images to portray the divine. He created a movement called CRADE, the Committee to Remove All Racial Images that Attempt to Portray the Divine. When CRADE began, America's dominant iconic images of God were white Caucasians. The angels were depicted in white skin, Jesus and all of the prophets were depicted as white. Even the hand of God descending from the clouds was white. The only dark-skinned images in Christianity were sinners, as exemplified in the artist's rendering of Judas, the one who portrayed Jesus. So that's an interesting thing too. For most of us that claim Jesus, you know, the only way we really know Jesus is through pictures and sculptures, paintings, and things like that, you know. So we really don't, we claim we know it. I know it. Yeah. Where is it? One of the comedians said, yeah, I saw it last night down in the alley. All those kind of stuff. So it said on August 5, 1983, issued of the American Muslim Journal, reported that in cities and towns around America, Bermuda, and throughout the Caribbean islands, trade groups were established to peacefully carry signs and pass out literature that ask. The question is, what would happen to the minds of Caucasian people if Bilalian or African American people would suddenly come into power with their mentality, with love for their religion? What would happen if nappy-headed black Jesuses were put all over the land and throughout their homes and in all their churches? What would happen to the minds of over a period of 300 years if they kept coming to churches and seeing our image as the Redeemer, seeing our image as the prophets, their apostles, their angels? They would be reduced to inferiority because the image before them of the supreme model of superiority would be black and not white. If we don't want dope in our communities, how much more should we be against a Caucasian image of God that makes Bilalians, blacks, think inferior and act inferior, and make Caucasians equally artificial? And this is another something that was introduced. I hear it a little bit in the distance in that word Bilalian. The Imam had introduced that to the community, and wanted us to try to introduce that to the African American in general as an ethnic identity. And I remember I was in San Antonio at the time, because I was there from 80 to 81, and I was there all night with one brother, trying to get him to really see that we wasn't trying to start a new school or a new group or new people. He was saying that this identity that we don't have, we have an identity crisis, African American, that Bilalian would be a good identity for us because of our similarity with Bilal's life. He was an African slave, free, he was black, and then the most important part about his life was that he was made the first muezzin, the caller to prayer. So his main role was to call the faithful to worship, to call the faithful to God. And the Imam say, that's what I want our role to be. So we're going to be called Bilalians. Call me Bilalian. I think I got one of those pins, they say it's called me Bilalian. And that's what he was trying to get us to do, to be able to take on that role of being able to call the faithful to worship, call the faithful to God, not so much as a black man, but because of that particular role, and because according to him, nature is black. So in nature, black, the nature is really what's calling us to God, calling us to worship, So all of that was wrapped up in that saying and idea that he gave. Some of us got it, and some of us didn't. I think enough of us got it. I think I've heard Imam Shuaib out of California. He's beginning to use it again. I don't know who else is using it, But because again, along with Bilalian, we were trying to give up idea of black and white. Don't use the term black. Don't use the term black. Use Bilalian. And at the same time, when I was in San Antonio, I had a chance to meet with some ministers. There was a minister alliance, and then they meet every week or every 2 weeks or whatever it was. And I'm always in these different groups and things. I was still doing the same thing. But I was with him one day, and one of the preachers, he said, "Now brother, y'all been pushing this black down our throat, just putting it down our throat. We finally accepted it. Now you talking about giving it up." I said, yeah. So I forget what conversation we had, but I remember him saying that. And I also remember about them at that meeting when they come together, all suited down and all of that. I'm sitting there looking, these brothers just look like gangsters coming there. Because they have that air about them, the preachers, they have that air about them. Like they really God give to the world and all this kind of stuff. And then they be sharp and everything, So all these little, I have had a lot of little stuff that's been helping me along the way to try to see a little bit better than I do, But anyway, Wallace was striking a death blow, and I got a picture over here I can show when we get through of us marching, and there's a sign now, a grade sign. I'm thinking that's in Dallas. I don't think it's in Houston, but I'm thinking that picture was taken in Dallas. I can't remember the year. It had to be in the early 80s, because that's when we were doing a lot of marching, petition drives, and all that kind of stuff, Says Wallace was striking a death blow to what was considered the ultimate form of white racism, God depicted in Caucasian flesh. Nor was Craig of Imam's effort to establish a black God. The stated end goal of Craig was to remove all images that attempt to portray the divine. In addition to scrutinize the unnatural race consciousness in Christianity, Craig also targeted the image of Elijah Muhammad's savior, W.D. Farad, a man who has strikingly Caucasian features. Wallace's intellect, set free by his parents to question and investigate all things, eventually became a freedom that questioned accepting W.D. Farad, a man, as God. While yet a teenager, Wallace had made a parallel of Farad's status as God in the flesh with the Christian belief that presented Jesus Christ as God in the flesh. And it says, as I grew older, some of my friends who would confide in me were carrying burdens too, and not understanding the Nation of Islam's concept of God. But one day I shared my thoughts with them on God, and I said, if we are not to believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that God has no son, then why should we believe that Mr. Farad is God or the Son of God? We know he was born. He was not that old. He was not 1,000 years old. So who is his father? It seems to me that we are saying the same thing and got it more confused. Yeah. Because they said that his father's name was Alfonso. Yeah, and his mother's name was Baby G. And I don't know if it's in here and one of the others. It was wondering how the spelling was the spelling baby G-E-E or baby capital G, which was that spelling for Farad's mother. But she was supposed to have been a pure white woman at the time when all whites, even the babies in the womb, were devils. But now here she is, 100% white, and she's not a devil. Yeah. But they had an explanation for that too. Yeah, see, just like Farad was the Son of God. He's God and the Son of God, just like Jesus is the Son of God and God. So Farad's father's name was Alfonso, and Farad was the Son and the God at the same time. All that stuff. Now, but it says, after his release from prison in 1946, Elijah Muhammad began instituting business ownership amongst the membership while still focusing on their mental and spiritual exodus. To achieve the financial do-for-self community, he recognized another hurdle that the African Americans had to overcome: the challenge of showing one face to the white public of America while living an opposing life internally, where many African Americans publicly feigned love for whites while privately verbalizing spite and hate. no one could ever charge Mr. Muhammad with being two-faced. Yes, over the years he evolved and adjusted his emphasis in accord with the society's overall treatment of African Americans, but he never was a participant in living a double-faced life. He instead chose to mentally migrate himself, telling all of his and calling as many of the African Americans who would follow him on an exodus away from the influence of America's mid-century racism, mid-20th century racism. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam provided its members with a do-for-self mentality that removed them from this duality, thus freeing them of needing white approval. The Islam presented by Mr. Muhammad purposely aimed at every pain of the African Americans in order to get their attention and call them out of the wilderness of North America, and an exodus away from the mental and spiritual grip of white America. The do-for-self mantra of the Nation of Islam was making bold and often disturbing statements and attention-getting claims of the greatness of being Black, independently Black. The popular do-for-self slogan of Elijah Muhammad was intended for every aspect of African American life. It stimulated in many African Americans an awakening from a dormancy that was induced by slavery and maintained by written and unwritten racist Jim Crow laws. The do-for-self theme offered opportunities for Mr. Muhammad's followers to state their unfulfilled needs of an independent and productive life. The undying yearning that are innate in all human beings, when watered with the words of encouragement to do for self, the human urge in many African Americans to independently accomplish what their other races had already achieved was powerful. Mr. Muhammad's do for self message was similar to Booker T. Washington's pick yourself up by your own bootstrap and be patient and prove yourself first. Now, I'm not sure how many of us know that Booker T. Washington was the first one that made that statement, because I remember Ronald Reagan telling us that when he was president. He put that up. Pick yourself up by your own bootstrap. And a lot of folks were pissed off at him. Thought he was throwing rocks at us, thing like he doesn't do, and never repeating something that one of our ancestors had mentioned and also moved us forward with. So when the Nation of Islam members obeyed Elijah Muhammad's do-for-self concept, it allowed them to stand proud and compete as men and women contributing to their Black nation and humanity as a whole. Being a positive factor in sustaining their own lives while bearing an Islamic holy name gave Nation of Islam members a great sense of dignity and pride. Nation of Islam members accepting Arabic holy names in place of European names was another unspoken statement telling whites, I'm no longer your slave. Therefore, I do not need your name, nor your acceptance or validation in order to be a free human being. By adopting the Islamic name, the followers of the Nation of Islam were sending a message to America and the world, proclaiming that they too can achieve in life bearing their own name, a righteous name. This is one of the reasons many converts to the Nation of Islam happily received their X in place of their former slave names. Their names changes also signal their intent to change everything about them that was a vestige of slavery. This mentality and spirit for independence from dependence upon whites spread rapidly amongst African American groups in the 1960s and 70s. For groups such as the Black Panthers and other pro-Black organizations, full independence, especially from white America, became their common theme in Black America. During this do-for-self era, many African American businesses, educational and social institutions, organizations adopted non-European names in an effort to demonstrate a sense of independence. These institutions chose African and Islamic names that, in addition to offering an awareness of Black heritage, also gave these associations a sense of purpose and dignity. African American professionals began to form Black organizations and associations within their respective fields in order to proclaim a sense of independence. African American lawyers, doctors, government officials, educators, police, fire service personnel, practically every field of employment that had African American employees was seen witnessing the formation of Black-oriented associations, societies, or organizations. Black student unions flourished around America at many large and small colleges and universities. Mr. Elijah Muhammad's do-for-self message resonated through Black America. Many non-Muslim parents began to give their children names with spelling and pronunciation theretofore unknown to humanity. I'm telling you, with these names we got nothing. Yeah, we have some cold names now. It says name that connected the African Americans with a new beginning. Even though the surname X was meant, which meant my true original last name is unknown, for the Nation of Islam brothers and sisters, receiving quote unquote my X was like earning a badge of honor. Native Wastonian Amathala Sharif, the former Georgetta, that ain't how you say that. How you say Georgetta? Georgetta? Yeah, Georgetta Stokes remembered the joy and excitement she felt upon finally receiving her X in 1970. Repeatedly, she had unsuccessfully written her acceptance letter to the Nation of Islam officials. She recalled, I was really frustrated because I thought I was always writing my letter well. And then they would send it back and say, no, write it again. Yeah. Now that was the question that I had. What did you have to say in the letter?
Just write it back exactly the way they sent it to you.
No. Oh, they would tell you how to write it? They would tell you what to write?
They would send you a lesson.
Yeah.
You learn the lesson, and then you write it down and send it back.
Yeah.
But it had to be exact.
Yeah.
If you left out a comma or didn't cross a T or type an I, and letter's coming back.
Yeah.
And no, you didn't get it right.
Yeah.
I had to do it a couple, 2-3 times.
Oh, yeah, you too.
You say you real when you got it? Yeah.
Sir.
You real, boy, you get a little feeling about that.
Yeah, that's the point that you would have done. I know. Yeah, the world's coming to an end. Yeah, brothership gonna go past by. Yeah, I was looking at look, they had us outside at night looking at the stars. They started dipping. That's it, man. I know that's it. Yeah, sparkling bright. But, you look at anything for a long time. Yeah, that's it, man. How in the world?
Yeah. Yeah, see, now that's the other thing that gets me. Now here's a man with a third grade education from Georgia. He's sending these people through all these changes. And some of them were educated. And couldn't get the letter accepted on the first try. Oh boy. Okay. Now let me see what she said. Yes, they send it back. The thing I remember, this is this. Wait a minute. Oh, I'm going right now. You recall. I was really frustrated because I thought I was always writing my letter real well. And then they would send it back and say, no, write it again. Finally, I received a letter that says that such. Take this to the mosque and present it to the minister. You have received your X. I screamed and hollered. It was so exciting because the process of working for it and working toward it was, it was intense. A thing I remember about it the most is that the following Sunday was Easter Sunday. And I felt like I was resurrected. I felt like, I just felt like, wow, on Easter Sunday, and I get my X. That was the best thing that could ever happen to me. I was really, really excited. I took it to the mosque, and the people were very happy. I came up there, and they called me Georgetta X. I was the first X under the name Georgetta. I just felt like I was walking on a cloud. Praise be to Allah. Yeah, that was now this was a telephone conversation in 2008, according to what we have here. So that's a beautiful thing there. And we got one piece to close, and we got some question, a comment, and already made some comments. It says, whether rich, poor, or middle class, Muslim, Christian, are committed to no particular faith system at all, every African American in significant ways has been positively affected by the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Sociologists are studying the teachings of Elijah Muhammad for solutions for many of the problems that affect the African American and soul, mind and soul. What in Elijah Muhammad's teachings was so potent that it deeply touched the lives of African Americans in ways no other leader of any race or ethnicity had been able to produce. The message of Elijah Muhammad was designed to address the specific needs of African Americans. Few, if any, who joined the Nation of Islam had the willpower or desire to question the man who had given them a sense of self and a response to America's racism of the 20th century. And that's a statement by Imam W.D. Muhammad. Praise be to Allah, guardian, evolver, sustainer of all the world. So that brings us to a nice end to our session. And just like I said earlier, I'm nice too. This is session 3 of a 2 sessions program. Yeah. So questions, comments for anybody? And I got this picture here. I'm going to give it to you. We did a lot of marching and parading and petition drives and all of that. I know I was in a petition drive when I was in San Antonio. We were wanting to get the Imam and the Pope of that particular year to have a dialogue.
I have to come in, brother.
Yes, sir.
Brother, the last brother brought up mothership.
Yes.
I was young. I was really young. Right? And I was up under that influence and stuff too. But one thing I thought was so stupid, man, they had people had so much food stashed away, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they had people with so much food. I never understood why they had that food. Huh?
Who had food stamps?
Different people in the community.
Oh, okay.
Because somebody, that was such a long time. Somebody, we was waiting on the mothership and something.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's gonna be destroyed. It's gonna be destroyed.
yeah, plus all the Muslims, you know, in the nation, we're gonna have a designated place that they go to,
Oh,
and a ship was gonna come back.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
groceries too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, people wasn't gonna be no food or nothing, you know.
That's all they.
Yeah.
Well, you know, at that time, and even in context of what we're seeing today, it wasn't such a bizarre statement because he wasn't the only one that had made statements like that.
No.
Mhm.
You understand? And even like pointing, even after they had, I don't even know how many people were aware that the nation had teachings like that. You know, like what you said, if you weren't in the nation,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that they had those teachings.
Yeah.
But other people were blaring it all out. They, you know, there was one famous one, Hollywood. More recently now, but with the same, you know, mothership, outer space that's gonna come. We're gonna go to the wilderness. So
yeah,
Like Jim Jones.
yeah.
Yeah.
it's a do you know where did that originate? Why did that come about in the teachings? And where is it found?
Is that in Waco?
That was brought by Farad brought that
Okay.
stuff to town. All of that teaching and lesson 1 and lesson 2, actual facts and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
He was one, and the thing that used to get me, I heard brothers and sisters talk about that for the mothership you had to weigh 150 pounds.
Yeah.
No matter how tall you were, you might be 7 feet tall, but you still got to weigh 150 pounds, or you weren't gonna be able to get on the ship.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of other folks, they were sad and all that because they couldn't lose that weight. All that other stuff was covered. Yeah.
The first time I ever heard Imam speak, he was like early. He was in the nation at that time. It was many years in the 90s. And it was a bit stunning because I'd never heard someone like use the mathematics and the size of the earth.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't even know this, but the way he did it, I was like,
Yeah. Oh, he hit.
I gotta give you a message.
The Imam said that you could go to the encyclopedia and get that information.
Yeah.
But and I listened to the Imam, you know, they would say, what good is all this information? You know, it sounded great, but what was the point and what is the value to find this to your life?
Well, you had
Practical.
some folks that looked at themselves as being nothing.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of them were uneducated, so this high knowledge and all of that coming to them without going to the big college and all that stuff, and then they go out there and challenge some of the college folks with that, and they'd either back up off of them or wouldn't pay them no mind, so they'd be sticking their chest out. You know, just like the little brother that was going to the University of Islam when the school first started. They in the first and second grade, maybe in kindergarten. They coming from school, and the other children coming from school. You got some 4th or 5th grade educated children. They say, "Oh, why y'all go to school? We y'all going to school? Yes, we go to the University of Islam." Now they 3 and 4 years old, and the other 5, 6, 8 grade, 7th grade, so they tell the University of Islam. The other say we going to elementary school.
Yeah. And then they start spewing out all of these facts.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like the 5th and 6th grade. Whoa, and we ain't got to that yet.
Yeah.
Yaku.
Yeah.
Oh man, see that now I know that didn't go outside unless somebody was talking. But you couldn't take that stuff. Well, some of them did try to take it outside and challenge people with Yaku grafted devil.
The island he grafted it over and over and over.
Finally got to the white.
Yeah.
Right. That's how you got all the different.
And then on,
White man of evil because he has the least amount of black blood.
but on top of that, there's a black scientist that created him and then taught him how to rule the black man. You know, that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
But again, they would preach it and stand on it. You know, but again, you couldn't take that outside. When they go outside, it was all different and polite.
But that is how this community evolved.
Yeah.
It's not, it evolved from that into the proper faith.
Yeah.
The proper faith with the guidance of the man one thing one.
Well, see, that's what made Malcolm so important. Because he was the one that was outside there. He was doing a lot of speaking, national representative, and he was able to talk with
Right.
college people and professors and government people and all that. He was really able to do it. That's why the Imam named the Masjid there in New York, Malcolm Shabazz. Because he said, Malcolm put us on Front Street.
Yeah.
Right.
So we got to honor him. I'll honor him with naming the Masjid there, Masjid Malcolm Shabazz, because he put us on Front Street. Yeah. Yeah. And that's all the people know. Nation really, that Malcolm,
Yeah.
they know of Elijah, but now,
Right.
you know, yeah, but Elijah, he's back there somewhere.
Yeah, he's the one thing. Yeah,
He's the man
one.
behind the man.
Yeah, he's the man. Right.
Yes.
Have you heard a story? So I read a biography of Elijah Muhammad, like in high school. It was the only book I could find when I just started studying Islam. And it was the only book on under Muhammad, the word Muhammad. Like they didn't actually have a biography on Prophet Muhammad, but they did have one on Elijah. So I read it, and one of the stories that stood out to me in the early experiences of his life, he said that in Georgia, one day he was out in the woods, and like he came upon a person hanging in a tree, and that it like had a stunning feel. It had a said that was like a turning point in his life. It shocked him. It had a profound effect on him. Have you ever heard about that story?
No, not about him, but I've heard it about a number of others.
Yeah.
Because that was a
He
big
was out in
thing.
the woods.
Georgia,
Hanging,
there was-
yeah, people hanging and all that kind of stuff. You run up on that, God, dog. And most of the time you run up on them, they've been there for a day or two, so they done, my tongue is all out and everything, you know, terrible, you know.
But what was even more profound than that was James Byrd, Jasper.
Yeah,
Just, I mean, that was what, in the 80s or 90s?
that was 90s, I think.
Yeah. I mean, you think all this is behind, you know it's still some hateful white folks,
Yeah,
but you didn't think that they would stoop to that at that particular time.
yeah, but at the same time, right there in Coons, Texas,
Yeah, well,
we had the first Muslim mayor in America.
yeah,
You got Jasper over here and Coons over here.
yeah,
They doing all of this,
Yeah.
James Byrd. You got a Muslim here who's the
George.
mayor of Coons, Texas. First mayor.
What's his name?
Charles B. Loud.
Yeah.
Sing, you hear him sing, you think it's Stevie Wonder.
yeah,
Good. Yeah, he had a band.
he was good in the church. He played piano in the church and all of that. Yes, ma'am.
Say it's so important to keep the faith and have patience, because back then, I don't know if you remember, and I think you were there, when we went to Chicago to march on the grid. It was so cold.
Oh,
Back in the South, we wasn't used to that.
right.
We marched a long time, and my daughter was like 5, 6,
Mm-hmm.
and she marched with us, and she kept saying, "I'm so cold, Mom, but it feel good," you know. So we had the strength to do those things back then,
Yeah.
to get ourselves together as one, to let the world know that we are here, you know,
Yeah.
it's not going nowhere.
Yeah.
So back then, it was a blessing. That's what we try to teach our youngsters now. Like we had the parade on Juneteenth, and a group of young girls, they couldn't go from 27th Street to 41st Street before they had to back up. It was too high. They was
Yeah.
a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, the Craig and Dallas,
Yeah.
all that marching we did, and thought nothing of it. So,
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
We're stronger than we thought. We know we are.
And
Y'all made a special trip for that?
Yes, we had buses to take us. We had vans. Remember I told you your joke you had with the van about the sister. Is your wife? Is your husband mad? But they rented vans from the Imam and the caravan.
yeah,
Chicago. We went to New Jersey. Oh, we went all around.
Detroit, a lot of places. A lot of them things I knew I was part of it. I can't recall them all, but I know I had it.
Let me comment on this. Like I said, I was no more than like 20, 21 years old, some 21, 22. But at Savior's Day, this is kind of what I really couldn't understand. Because all those teachers we got from United Farmers. Savior's Day, there was a lot of white people up on the stage with Elijah.
Yeah.
We called them scientists.
Yeah.
We called
There
them
was a lot of white
scientists.
people up on the stage. He said, and he introduced them to everybody that was there
Yeah.
as his friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, because when he said, I said,
Why you got the devil up there? Yeah, we wouldn't call them that to their face, but in our own circle, they would have said.
But I'm thinking, it might have been yesterday, not too long ago. Somebody was mentioning about Malcolm when he went to Mecca, how he changed and all of that.
Yeah.
Malcolm knew that there were white Muslims before he went to Mecca. Because there are a lot of them visited the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, just like you said, he had on the stage and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So he knew, but that was an opportunity for him to use that psychology, I guess you might say, to soften things up and kind of try to put the touch on the Caucasians. That they can be Muslim, they are Muslim and all that. Because right now, it's always mentioned about the Turks. They are nothing but white folk. Turkish Muslim. They all white.
Yeah.
Yes.
Syrians too.
Yeah.
Syrian.
Yeah, I just with all the information that we have that we are visiting, right, throughout this whole presentation, it appears that throughout history, the pathway to God has always been through man's psychology. And psychology, as we talk about the transition, not just from the nation, even prior to that, even us coming out of slavery, coming into the Nation of Islam, and then evolving from that. And it has always been the whoever can influence the psyche of the human being.
Yeah.
And I recall Imam Muhammad saying, or it is being said about what he was doing when he transitioned, helped the transition from the Nation of Islam into Islam proper. You started off talking about Bilal and how we needed this identity, and all this was in our psyche because we was holding on to we were holding on to so many things that were given to us in slavery, right? So this type of psychological surgery that Imam Muhammad performed, if you can call it that, because it was him, weaning the community from a language, a mystic language, coming into, and you got to think, and I thought about it like this, because at the time when you looked at Islam proper versus coming out of the Nation of Islam, that's an Arab religion, that's this and that. But Imam Muhammad, Allah blessed him to look at Bilal, which Bilal was a real figure in the history of Islam. That was relevant to our history, right? As coming out of slave mentality, right? And Allah blessed him to use that. And that too was like a bridge, another bridge to bring us out of something into something bigger or something better, right? But when I look at the whole scope of even now today, psychology, what Sister Maggie was talking about, the difference between the ambition that we had to go out, to travel and go out and march somewhere far away from home in the weather that wasn't even, we have the mentality of people today that would do it in their own city, saying it's too hot outside, let's wait till after. But when by any means necessary means jump on a van and go drive 16 hours
Yeah.
in the cold weather and do it by any means necessary. But that psychology, I believe, is the thing that should be focused on even now, like building up the psyche of people to understand that somebody else has got you thinking another way to distract you from what's the real purpose is.
But even with Farad Muhammad, his thing, he made it was plain. We are here to raise mentally dead. The mentally dead. That's what but everybody thought about the dead. We just think, but he said the mentally dead. That's what we want to raise.
Wow.
So that's what the psychology in the very beginning.
Right.
You know, and like myself, I'm always thinking about that because again, a lot of times I don't like to bring it up, but it's always close to my mind. Before I became a Muslim, I was kind of out there with these other folks, and you see how these con players and gamblers and all that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have a tough psychology.
Yes. Yeah.
You have be so sharp, and the other people so lame. Have a man behind some jive, go in the bank and pull out $10,000 and bring it out. His food. They think he think he got a food here,
Yeah.
and he wind up
Yeah.
getting fleeced. And a lot of them lost their lives, went crazy and all that behind that people. I said, "Boy, now this is really something." And you see the same thing here going on. That psychology. It's and the Imam said, "Man means mind."
Right. Yeah. Right.
So that's why you got to hook up with that psychology.
Right.
Now, I'll get you one other thing. That show, Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
you know, at the end, Dorothy trying to get home. And supposedly the good angel told her, you always had the witch. You always had the ability to go home. It's all in your mind.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what she was telling her at the end.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you had to click in her heels together. But your mentality, your mentality take you from here to there.
Yeah.
If you know how to use it, how to apply it.
Yeah.
You know, that's what she was telling her, and so that's what Farad and Elijah Muhammad was doing with us.
Yeah.
You always been the God. You know, even though we're not,
But in control of your life.
Yeah.
In control of your life.
Yeah.
You have the authority over your life.
Yes.
He's trying to hand people back.
Yes.
Their self-determination that was taken from them. Their self-identity, their determination.
Yeah.
The willingness to just get up and do something for yourself.
Yeah.
You're trying to put that back into them
Yes.
some way. And that was the way they
Yeah.
Yes. And Bilal, him getting that Western position was like us, and way after him, us, you know, Frederick Douglass getting in that president, Lincoln,
Yeah.
getting in his ear, reminding him, hey, y'all supposed to be Christians.
Yeah.
This is the way you're gonna treat another human being.
Yeah.
You know, playing on not only on his psyche but on his emotions too. Y'all supposed to be, y'all profess to the world that y'all this way, but yet you doing another human being that like that. You know, so he got to Lincoln.
Yeah. Okay.
Brother, let me ask you something. Now, I used to always think about Master Farad, right?
Mm.
When he left, and saying to Elijah Muhammad. But the man knew Master Farad Muhammad. And if I'm not mistaken, he had to come, they talked, didn't have to.
Well, he told us who Farad was, called him Abdullah. I forget the whole name, but Imam Muhammad pointed him out.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
His name is Abdullah. I forget now. Yeah, so he knew.
He knew
He
Master
said where he
gone
lived,
so many
they
times.
have to have a lecture where he gives and he says, look, that he didn't go up because there was a myth that he went up into space or he mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah.
That it wasn't a mystery. He moved to Oakland. He still lives there. Or something like that. He still lives there. And he mentioned his name, basically saying, look, this was something we don't believe.
Yeah.
It was basically not true. In the nicest way. And Imam Muhammad had a way that he could say things that were so uncomfortable to be said, but he had a way to say it.
Yeah,
that
make
couldn't
you
help
accept it, but he cut you up.
I wish I had.
Like Broad probably passed on now.
I think so. I think he did.
I would hope so. We'd be way over 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1930s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But see, like you saying, the man had a way of
Breaking hard.
breaking stuff down.
Yes.
And this what I still hear, and you got these criticizers.
Mm-hmm.
They're listening for a certain way Islam is supposed to be taught and so forth. And they live, oh, he don't do nothing but talk. Yeah, that's all he do, talk. He just talk. But he's doing more than talking. He's crafting and
Right.
giving information and all of these kind of things, wrapping it up and everything. But a lot of us, we got this certain way that Islam is supposed to be taught. Certain verses, certain phrases, don't go out and don't do that. You know, that's why for myself, I've always kind of since I've been able to do it, but I'm not necessarily comfortable doing Jumu'ah. Because Jumu'ah is formal. And see, I'm not formal. And I might do all this kind of stuff. I ain't supposed to be doing that in Jumu'ah.
Well,
So I accepted it at the same time. I keep talking to him. I said, you know, you got to go up there. I ain't nowhere in the world.
I've never seen you do it. I've heard about it though, but I've never seen it.
One person.
And I ask a lot of please forgive me. I be trying to be formal.
yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, brothers and sisters, praise be to Allah.
Yes, sir.
This is now. This is the thing that I like the most. And I talk about this all the time. I hope we promote this. We need to have discussion more than we have footballs. The discussion is what's missing in our settings.
Right.
We can get our children involved a lot so you can have discussions. But football, they just look at the football and they know you got to do this.
Right.
You can't say nothing and all this kind of stuff. But in discussions, all this stuff comes up and we come up with a lot of answers and ideas and things like that. And that's what I like for us to do is have discussion more than just footballs.
Okay.
And it'll help us a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think even moving forward in our communities, it's so many people that we have so many more resources than our parent generation had today.
Yeah.
And so much, and I say resources mean we have influence, we have money, we even have property, we have expertise. My thing is, how do we invite our community, and I say our community, meaning primarily the African American community, to begin to look more towards our social reform based on some of the model that the Nation of Islam set forth? Because I hear this utopic idea of people saying go to Atlanta. Atlanta's a black,
Yeah.
And in many parts of Atlanta, there are successful black communities. What I'm saying is, we didn't have in the history of African American people in this country, the biggest change and progress and social reform came through the Nation of Islam.
Mhm.
We saw more independence around the country, not just in Chicago or Milwaukee, right? Through the Nation of Islam. How can we take that model and what we did and those accomplishments, just like we look at other stuff in history, right? They want to teach you all this other stuff. How can we make this become a popular attraction for African Americans to say, if we did this back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and we have more than they had then, now, why can't we look at that model and say, this is how we should build, and look at for everything in the context of our own education, to our own markets, to our own, and it's not like we can't do that now.
Yeah.
I think just the distraction of things now is so much more heavier that we don't realize. It's like tricking you out of your own self. Like you being tricked out of your own self because knowledge is so prevalent, and all information ain't knowledge.
Yeah.
But information is what's winning the battle, and we just become more distant at what we can't do, how we can't do this. But really, we have all the things in place to do that. And I think that some kind of way, I think the discussions that we have when it comes to community settings should be more about, look, from using this model and taking what we have today, we can actually produce our own education, a field of education, our own places where we can get healthy food, halal food, and ain't gonna, just send us, put our bodies through all these different complications. But it's the discussion that has to be had more than me just telling you about, But I agree with you. I think the exchange information will help.
I don't know what's happening around the country, but for me, in our discussions and on the sets, and I think our imams, if they can, need to be there more. Because even though we have evolved and all of that, we still have that, I don't know, desire, or whatever it is, for leadership to be present. Yeah, present, and tell us what to do. But now let the people do it themselves. Well, yeah, but at the same time, you need to be there. It just won't leave. Even though we're educated, we evolve, but that idea, in my opinion, it just won't leave. The people are not comfortable if the imam is not around much. Even though you got these other brothers and sisters doing things, all coming off the roof and the whole 9 yards, but they still, still looking for him just to be around a little bit more. So it's a tough one, but I don't know. We're moving, and especially the imams stay in contact with each other too. That's the other thing.
Okay.
And that keeps happening. We'll be able to make it. Yeah. Okay.
One thing, I think brothers had this song. It's your thing. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's even though that was back in the 70s, it's still going on.
Yeah.
Even like the NBA players, football, baseball, whatever, track.
Yeah.
And then people that's just scholars. They still, everybody want to do their own thing. We're not looking at each other as a community.
Yeah.
It's like, I got mine, you get yours.
Yeah.
And
see, that's that psychology that has been little by little been introduced, at what they call individualism.
Yeah.
That's that psychology that I've been seeing that creeping in.
Yeah.
And we have to keep in mind that the serpent was the most slick.
Deceptive.
It's deceptive.
Beguiling.
It's something in there. I can't think of the word in the Bible, but that's the idea that he is so deceptive. He's most.
Oh yeah.
He'll take you out of yourself without you really knowing.
Yeah.
Makes you think you're doing it yourself, but you've been by another force.
Wow.
Yeah. His influence on me.
Yeah. Okay.
Imam, will you lead us in the salat, please?
Okay. Yeah,
You're trying to run. I thought you were trying to run.
Brother, man.
Huh? You okay? So get up there. What did you?
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله رسول الله
الله أكبر
الله أكبر
الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
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 سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
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 سمع الله لمن حمده Allahu Akbar.
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 Sami Allahu liman hamidah. Allahu Akbar.
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 Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. Tabarakta ya Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. Oh Allah, you are the peace, and from you comes peace. Blessed are you, our Lord, and highly exalted. We seek repentance from you and turn to you in praise and venerate the Prophet. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum.
Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar. Takbir. Allahu Akbar.
Thank you, brother man.
You love.
We have
No, I got it.
we have refreshments.
So this picture looked like it was probably
like refreshments, brother.
This looked like Dallas.
I'm thinking that's what it is.
Yeah. This really.
Oh,
No, she gonna talk, bro.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We just have a few brief announcements. We would again like to thank our dear brother, Haywood Talib, for his beautiful, beautiful and knowledgeable presentation. Imam Talib, we love you and we appreciate you. Again, please join us every Friday at 1:30 for Jummah prayer and every Sunday at 12:30 for our public address. Also, please join us on Thursday night for our guided tour, for our guided study on the Holy Quran. Join us. We invite you again to join us for a cover-to-cover group study on Thursday night from 6:30 to 8 p.m. again at the masjid, inshallah. Something for every day. Please join us tomorrow, Monday, inshallah, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Carver Park. Please contact Imam Lee at 281-691-3787 for additional information. The brother continuously gives out free chess lessons to young and old alike, inshallah. We appreciate any and all donations, and as we approach the end of the month, we'd like for you to start thinking and rethinking and giving generously. We could not do this without you. We are a 501c3. We have, of course, obligations to keep the lights on, to do dawah, just to maintain our house of worship, inshallah. So again, as we maintain our houses at home, please think about the masjid and our place of worship, inshallah. You may mail in your donation to 7610 Highway 6, Hitchcock, Texas, 77563, via PayPal at paypal.me/MasjidNewAfrica, and via Cash App at $MasjidNewAfrica. And again, no donation is too small or too great, and we are always so very, very appreciative. We'd like to remind you and announce that Imam, the community of Imam Warthuddin Muhammad will be holding their 50th anniversary in Philadelphia. This will be held August the 1st through the 3rd. And for further information, you may go to www.iwdmcommunity.com. There are those of us from the Houston area, also right here in Hitchcock, Texas, Galveston. There are plans to commute, to drive together. So please contact us via Facebook if you would like, message us, and maybe we can caravan together, inshallah. I think this concludes our announcements. Oh, one more. One of our sister masjids, Fifth Ward Islamic Center in Houston, Texas, is offering a 12-step recovery program for brothers and sisters alike. And this will be held on, again, Tuesday at 7 p.m. in person and via Zoom. For further information, please see Fifth Ward Islamic Center Facebook page for additional information. Again, we thank you all for joining us. We pray that you have a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful week. Thank you again. Until next time. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah's peace be unto you.